The signing ceremony at Aso Rock Presidential Villa in Abuja marked a turning point in Nigeria's economic history. President Bola Tinubu, surrounded by ministers, traditional rulers, and representatives from international mining companies, put pen to paper on agreements that would fundamentally transform Africa's largest economy. The Lithium Mining Consortium, led by a joint venture between Norwegian company Equinor, Japanese giant Sumitomo Corporation, and local partner Dangote Mining, had committed $75 billion to develop Nigeria's lithium resources over the next 15 years. The economic implications began manifesting immediately. Nigeria's currency, the naira, had strengthened by 40% against the US dollar in just 3 months following the discovery announcement. International investors, who had long been skeptical about Nigeria's economic prospects due to overdependence on volatile oil revenues, suddenly viewed the country as one of the world's most promising investment destinations. The Lagos Stock Exchange experienced unprecedented growth, with mining-related stocks leading the surge. Finance Minister Dr. Wale Edun announced that lithium revenues would be managed through a newly created sovereign lithium fund, designed to avoid the resource curse that had plagued Nigeria's oil sector. Learning from Norway's successful oil fund model, the new institution would invest lithium profits internationally while using only a small percentage for immediate government spending. This approach aimed to ensure that future generations would benefit from the current lithium boom. The ripple effects throughout Nigeria's economy were swift and dramatic. Construction companies found themselves overwhelmed with contracts for mining infrastructure, roads, and housing for the anticipated influx of workers. Nigerian engineering firm Julius Berger saw its stock price triple as investors bet on the infrastructure boom that would accompany lithium development. Local steel companies benefited from increased demand for construction materials, while cement manufacturers struggled to keep up with orders. Banking sector transformation accelerated as international financial institutions established significant presences in Nigeria to serve the growing mining economy. JP Morgan Chase opened its first full-service office in Lagos, while Standard Chartered expanded its Nigerian operations dramatically. Local banks like Guarantee Trust Bank and Zenith Bank launched specialized mining finance divisions, providing credit facilities for Nigerian companies seeking to participate in the lithium supply chain. The impact on Nigeria's federal budget was revolutionary. Government revenue projections showed that lithium taxes and royalties could generate over $200 billion annually once full production was achieved. This represented more than double Nigeria's entire federal budget for 2024. The windfall promised to fund massive infrastructure projects, education improvements, and healthcare system expansion that had been postponed for decades due to budget constraints. However, managing such rapid economic transformation created new challenges. Inflation began rising as increased economic activity drove up demand for goods and services faster than supply could expand. The Central Bank of Nigeria, led by Governor Dr. Olayemi Cardoso, implemented careful monetary policies to prevent the economy from overheating while maintaining growth momentum. Interest rates were adjusted multiple times as policymakers sought to balance economic expansion with price stability. The labor market experienced unprecedented changes as Nigeria suddenly faced a shortage of skilled workers in mining-related fields. Universities scrambled to establish geology, mining engineering, and materials science programs to meet growing demand. The University of Jos, historically strong in geology due to its location in Nigeria's tin mining region, became a focal point for lithium-related research and training. International universities partnered with Nigerian institutions to accelerate workforce development. Entrepreneurial opportunities multiplied across the economy as the lithium boom created demand for countless support services. Local catering companies won contracts to feed mining workers, while transport companies benefited from increased cargo movement. Small-scale manufacturers began producing equipment and supplies for mining operations, often with technical assistance from international partners seeking to meet local content requirements. The development of Nasarawa State accelerated dramatically as it transformed from a primarily agricultural region into Nigeria's mining capital. The state government, led by Governor Abdullahi Sule, launched an ambitious infrastructure development plan that included new airports, expanded electrical power generation, and modernized telecommunications networks. Property values in the state capital Lafia increased by over 300% as investors, and workers sought accommodation near mining. Operations. Women's economic participation expanded significantly as mining companies implemented policies to ensure gender inclusion in the workforce. Programs led by organizations like Women in Mining Nigeria created pathways for women to enter traditionally male-dominated mining careers. Female entrepreneurs also benefited from increased economic activity, with many establishing businesses that served the growing mining sector workforce. The technology sector experienced an unexpected boom as mining operations required sophisticated digital systems for operations, logistics, and environmental monitoring. Nigerian tech companies partnered with international firms to develop mining-specific software solutions. This collaboration accelerated Nigeria's broader technology sector development, with Lagos and Abuja emerging as significant technology hubs serving the mining industry. Regional economic integration accelerated as Nigeria's lithium wealth created opportunities for collaboration with neighboring countries. Cameroon and Niger signed agreements to provide transportation corridors for Nigerian lithium exports, while Ghana positioned itself as a regional processing center for lithium products. The Economic Community of West African States (ECOWAS) established a special working group to coordinate lithium-related economic policies across member countries. International trade relationships shifted significantly as Nigeria evolved from being primarily an oil exporter to becoming a crucial supplier of critical minerals. Trade agreements with the United States, European Union, and Asian countries were renegotiated to reflect Nigeria's new economic importance. The country gained significant leverage in international negotiations as major economies competed for reliable lithium supplies. However, the economic transformation also created concerns about inequality and regional development disparities. Northern Nigeria, where most lithium deposits were located, began experiencing rapid development, while southern regions worried about being left behind. The federal government established the National Lithium Development Commission to ensure that benefits were distributed equitably across all regions of the country. Small and medium enterprises, SMEs, found new opportunities but also faced challenges. From the rapidly changing economy, some traditional businesses struggled to compete with well-funded mining sector enterprises, while others discovered profitable niches serving the growing mining workforce. Government programs provided support for SME adaptation to the new economic environment, including training programs and access to credit facilities. The agricultural sector experienced mixed impacts from the lithium boom. While some farming areas were lost to mining operations, increased prosperity in mining regions created higher demand for agricultural products. Farmers near mining areas found ready markets for their produce, often at prices significantly higher than traditional agricultural markets. This created incentives for agricultural modernization and productivity improvements. Foreign exchange earnings from lithium exports began supplementing Nigeria's traditional oil revenues, reducing the country's vulnerability to oil price fluctuations. The diversification of export revenues provided greater economic stability and allowed for more predictable government budgeting. International credit rating agencies upgraded Nigeria's sovereign debt ratings in recognition of the improved economic fundamentals. As the first year following the discovery concluded, Nigeria had transformed from a country struggling with economic challenges into one of the world's most watched emerging economies. The lithium boom had catalyzed broader economic modernization, infrastructure development, and technological advancement that positioned Nigeria for sustained growth well beyond the mining sector. The economic revolution that began with Dr. Okafor's geological discovery was reshaping not just Nigeria, but the entire West African region's economic landscape. 5 years after Dr. Amara Okafor's discovery, Nigeria had transformed beyond recognition. The sleek bullet train connecting Lagos to the new mining capital of Lafia cut through landscapes dotted with solar farms, and as dawn broke over the village of Kefi, near the epicenter of the lithium discovery, farmer Aliyu Bello looked out over his family's ancestral lands with troubled eyes. For generations, his family had grown millet, sorghum, and cassava on these rolling hills. Now, international mining executives were offering him more money than he had ever imagined, for the right to dig up the very soil that had sustained his community for centuries. The transformation of daily life in the mining region had been swift and dramatic. Villages that had rarely seen visitors from outside the state now hosted delegations from around the world. Luxury vehicles navigated dusty rural roads, carrying officials in expensive suits to meet with local chiefs and community leaders. The contrast between the international attention and the basic living conditions in many communities was stark and sometimes uncomfortable. Hawa Muhammad, a widow who supported her 5 children by selling vegetables in the local market, found herself thrust into negotiations worth millions of dollars. Her small plot of land, which provided barely enough income for school fees and basic needs, apparently sat directly above some of the richest lithium deposits. Mining company representatives visited her modest home weekly, each offering increasingly large sums for mining rights. The sudden wealth possibilities created complex social dynamics within communities. Neighbors who had shared resources for decades now eyed each other suspiciously, wondering who might receive the largest compensation packages. Young men who had planned to pursue farming or small-scale trading suddenly dreamed of working in high-tech mining operations. Traditional authority structures faced new pressures as international companies sought official approval from local chiefs, while also needing individual landowner consent. Chief Haruna Danladi, traditional ruler of the Gwandara people in the affected area, convened daily meetings to address his community's concerns. He had witnessed the oil boom's impact on communities in southern Nigeria and was determined that his people would not suffer similar exploitation. The chief insisted that any mining agreement must include guaranteed employment for local youth, funding for schools and hospitals, and protection of sacred sites. However, navigating these negotiations proved challenging for communities with limited exposure to large-scale industrial projects. Many farmers couldn't fully comprehend the technical aspects of lithium mining or the long-term environmental implications. Some families disagreed internally about whether to accept mining company offers, creating tensions between older, community members who valued traditional land use and younger people excited about potential economic opportunities. Religious leaders across different faiths found themselves counseling community members about these difficult decisions. Pastor Samuel Yakubu of the New Hope Church organized information sessions to help his congregation understand their options. Similarly, Imam Abdullah Usman worked with Islamic scholars to provide guidance about the religious implications of major land use changes. Both emphasized the importance of considering future generations when making these momentous decisions. The psychological impact on communities was significant. Elderly residents like Mama Comfort Al-Hassan, who remembered when their greatest concern was seasonal rainfall patterns, struggled to understand how their quiet farming region had become the center of global attention. The constant stream of visitors, helicopters conducting surveys, and media crews documenting the story created a sense of surreal displacement for many longtime residents. Educational challenges emerged as parents tried to help their children understand the changes happening around them. Primary school teacher Grace Adamu found her students distracted by the excitement and uncertainty surrounding the lithium discovery. Some children stopped attending classes regularly, either to help families navigate meetings with mining representatives or simply because of the general disruption to normal routines. Women's groups throughout the region organized to ensure their voices were heard in the decision-making process. Led by activist Fatima Abdullahi, these groups pointed out that women often bore the greatest responsibility for water collection, food production, and childcare, all areas that could be significantly affected by large-scale mining operations. They demanded representation in all negotiations and specific protections for women's economic activities. The discovery also highlighted existing inequalities within communities. Wealthier families who could afford legal representation were better positioned to negotiate favorable terms with mining companies. Poorer households, particularly those headed by widows or elderly people, often felt overwhelmed by the complexity of the decisions they faced. Some accepted early offers that were later revealed to be far below market value. Health concerns added another layer of complexity to community discussions. While mining companies promised state-of-the-art safety measures, some residents worried about potential contamination of water sources and air quality. Dr. Martha Oyewole, who ran the only health clinic serving several villages in the area, documented increasing levels of anxiety and stress-related illnesses among community members dealing with these unprecedented choices. Young people faced particularly complex decisions about their futures. University student Musa Garba, home for holidays from Ahmadu Bello University, found his career plans completely disrupted. He had been studying agriculture with plans to modernize farming in his community, but the lithium discovery made him reconsider whether agriculture would remain viable in the region. Many of his peers were dropping out of school to position themselves for mining jobs that might or might not materialize. The influx of outsiders also created cultural tensions. International executives and technical experts, despite their good intentions, often struggled to understand local customs and social norms. Some companies hired cultural consultants and community liaison specialists, but others made significant mistakes that offended local sensibilities or disrupted traditional practices. Economic impacts began appearing even before mining operations commenced. Local prices for basic goods increased as demand grew from the influx of visitors. Small businesses like restaurants and guest houses experienced unprecedented growth, but many lacked the resources to expand quickly enough to meet demand. This created opportunities for some entrepreneurs while pricing others out of markets they had served for years. Transportation. Infrastructure became a major challenge as increased traffic strained. Rural roads designed for agricultural use. The federal government promised infrastructure improvements, but these would take years to complete. In the meantime, communities dealt with dust, noise, and disruption from heavy vehicles conducting surveys and transporting equipment. Environmental concerns went beyond potential mining impacts to immediate changes in land use patterns. Survey activities and the presence of numerous vehicles began affecting local wildlife and vegetation. Farmers reported changes in water table levels even before mining began, raising questions about the cumulative impact of increased industrial activity in the region. Despite these challenges, many community members remained optimistic about potential benefits. Sarah Adebayo, a recent graduate with a degree in geology, saw the discovery as an opportunity to build expertise that could benefit Nigeria for generations. She began organizing training programs to help local youth understand mining operations and position themselves for technical roles. The community response revealed both the promise and the peril of sudden resource wealth. While the lithium discovery offered unprecedented opportunities for economic development and improved living standards, it also threatened to disrupt social structures and traditional ways of life that had evolved over centuries. The choices made by these communities would ultimately determine whether the lithium boom became a blessing or a curse for the people whose ancestral lands contained this valuable treasure. The news of Nigeria's massive lithium discovery spread like wildfire through the corridors of power in Beijing, London, Washington, and other major capitals. Within weeks of the initial announcement, the small mining camp in Nasarawa State had transformed into a bustling hub of international activity. Private jets landed daily at nearby airstrips, carrying executives from the world's largest mining companies and representatives from governments eager to secure their share of this unprecedented resource. Chinese. Premier Li Qiang was among the first world leaders to respond. China controlled nearly 80% of the world's lithium processing capacity, and securing access to raw materials was crucial for maintaining their dominance in the electric vehicle and battery industries. Within 72 hours of the discovery's confirmation, a high-level Chinese delegation was on a plane to Abuja, carrying preliminary agreements worth billions of dollars. The Chinese approach was characteristically comprehensive. They offered not just to mine the lithium, but to build the entire infrastructure needed to support the operation. Their proposal included constructing new railways, upgrading ports, building processing facilities, and even establishing a lithium-focused university to train Nigerian workers. The total investment package exceeded $50 billion, representing the largest foreign investment proposal in Nigerian history. But China wasn't the only major power interested in Nigeria's lithium. The European Union, desperate to reduce their dependence on Chinese battery supply chains, quickly assembled their own task force. Led by German industrial giant BASF and supported by the EU's Africa Development Fund, the Europeans offered a different approach. They proposed creating a lithium partnership that would give Nigeria more control over the mining operations while guaranteeing long-term purchasing agreements American companies were equally eager to get involved. Tesla's supply chain team, led by Drew Baglino, arrived in Lagos for discussions with Nigerian officials. Elon Musk himself tweeted about the discovery, calling it potentially game-changing for sustainable transport in Africa. Tesla's proposal focused on creating an integrated supply chain that would see Nigerian lithium turned into batteries for electric vehicles manufactured in Morocco and South Africa. The sudden international attention created a diplomatic challenge for Nigerian President Bola Tinubu. His government had been working to diversify Nigeria's economy away from oil dependence, but they hadn't anticipated managing such massive foreign interests so quickly. The president assembled a special lithium task force, bringing together Nigeria's brightest economic minds to navigate these complex negotiations. Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, former finance minister and current director general of the World Trade Organization, was called upon to advise the government. Her experience in international negotiations proved invaluable, as Nigeria faced pressure from multiple directions. She emphasized the importance of learning from other countries' experiences with resource extraction, particularly the mistakes made in oil development. The competition between international players created opportunities but also risks. Mining executives began making increasingly generous offers to secure mining rights. Some proposals included upfront payments of several $billion, promises of local job creation, and commitments to environmental protection. However, Dr. Okonjo-Iweala warned that the most attractive offers might not be the best for Nigeria's long-term interests. Local communities found themselves at the center of this international attention. Village Chief Malam Ibrahim Sani, whose community sat directly above part of the lithium deposit, suddenly found himself meeting with executives from companies worth hundreds of billions of dollars. These international visitors promised schools, hospitals, and modern infrastructure for his people, but he remained cautious about the potential disruption to their traditional way of life. The Australian mining company BHP Billiton took a different approach, focusing on smaller-scale sustainable mining operations. Their CEO, Mike Henry, spent 2 weeks in Nigeria meeting with community leaders and environmental groups. BHP's proposal emphasized their experience with indigenous communities in Australia and their commitment to environmental rehabilitation after mining operations concluded. Meanwhile, Indian companies led by Adani Group saw Nigeria's lithium as crucial for India's growing electric vehicle market. Prime Minister Narendra Modi personally called President Tinubu to discuss potential partnerships. India's approach emphasized South-South cooperation and technology transfer, positioning themselves as a more natural partner than Western or Chinese companies. The influx of foreign interest began to strain Nigeria's regulatory systems. The Department of Petroleum Resources, which had traditionally overseen most extractive industries, found themselves overwhelmed by the technical complexity of lithium mining regulations. They quickly hired international consultants and began developing new frameworks specifically for lithium extraction. Financial institutions also entered the picture. The World Bank offered technical assistance and potential funding for infrastructure development. The International Finance Corporation proposed creating a special investment vehicle to help Nigeria manage the development process while maintaining some ownership of the resource. These multilateral institutions emphasize the importance of transparent governance and community engagement. However, not everyone welcomed the international attention. Some Nigerian civil society groups worried about a new form of resource colonialism. Environmental lawyer Priscilla Achakpa led a coalition demanding that any lithium development must benefit ordinary Nigerians, not just international corporations and political elites. Her organization organized community meetings across the mining region to educate local people about their rights. The international competition also created internal political tensions. Some politicians from northern Nigeria, where the lithium was located, argued for greater regional control over the resource. They pointed to the Niger Delta's experience with oil, where local communities had seen relatively little benefit from decades of extraction. These political dynamics complicated the government's negotiations with foreign companies. As the bidding war intensified, some companies began offering increasingly creative partnerships. A consortium of Japanese companies proposed building a complete lithium-to-battery manufacturing chain in Nigeria. potentially making the country a major supplier to the Asian automotive market. French company Orano suggested combining lithium mining with renewable energy projects, creating a completely green supply chain. The scramble for Nigeria's lithium also had broader geopolitical implications. American officials worried about Chinese dominance in yet another critical mineral supply chain. European leaders saw Nigerian lithium as essential for their climate goals and energy independence. The discovery had essentially created a new front in the global competition for strategic resources. Dr. Okafor, whose original discovery had triggered this international frenzy, watched the developments with mixed feelings. She was proud that her work had revealed such valuable resources for Nigeria, but concerned about the pace of development and the potential for poor decisions. She began working with international academic institutions to ensure that environmental and social considerations remained central to any mining operations. As the second month after the discovery concluded, Nigeria faced a crucial decision point. Multiple billion-dollar offers sat on the table, each with different implications for the country's future. The choice they made would determine not just Nigeria's role in the global lithium industry, but potentially the entire trajectory of Africa's participation in the clean energy revolution. Dr. Amara Okafor wiped the sweat from her forehead as she examined the rock samples under the blazing Nigerian sun. The geologist had been working in the remote hills of Nasarawa State for 3 months, leading a small team of international researchers on what many considered a routine mineral survey. Little did she know that the samples in her hands would soon trigger the largest economic shift in Africa's history. The morning started like any other in the mining camp. Workers gathered around the breakfast table, discussing their plans for the day while sipping strong coffee. The team had been drilling core samples across a 50-kilometer stretch of land, looking for various minerals that could boost Nigeria's mining sector. Most of their previous discoveries had been modest, some iron ore here, a bit of gold there. Nothing that would make international headlines, but something was different about the samples they had collected the previous week. The lab technician, James Adeleke, had noticed unusual readings when he ran the preliminary tests. The lithium content in these rocks was unlike anything he had seen before. At first, he thought there might be an error in his equipment. He ran the tests again, then a third time. Each result showed the same incredible numbers. When James approached Dr. Okafor with his findings, she initially shared his skepticism. Lithium deposits of this magnitude were typically found in South American salt flats or Australian hard rock mines. Nigeria had never been known for significant lithium reserves. The idea that they might have stumbled upon something extraordinary seemed almost too good to be true. However, as a seasoned scientist, Dr. Okafor knew that extraordinary claims required extraordinary evidence. She decided to expand their testing protocol and bring in additional expertise. Within days, she had contacted colleagues at universities in London, Toronto, and Sydney. She needed independent verification of what they were seeing. The expanded drilling program began immediately. Using more sophisticated equipment borrowed from a nearby oil exploration company, the team started taking samples from a wider area. Each new core sample told the same remarkable story. The lithium concentrations were not just high, they were unprecedented. Some samples showed lithium oxide levels exceeding 4%, far higher than most commercial lithium mines around the world. As word of the discovery began to spread through scientific circles, Dr. Okafor found herself fielding calls from mining executives, government officials, and international investors. Everyone wanted to know the same thing: how much lithium was actually there. The preliminary estimates were staggering, but she knew they needed comprehensive geological surveys to determine the true scope of the deposit. The Nigerian government, initially cautious about the claims, decided to send their own team of experts to verify the findings. Minister of Mines and Steel Development, Dr. Kayode Fayemi, arrived at the site with a delegation of senior officials. They had seen mining booms come and go, but the data they were presented with was unlike anything in Nigeria's mining history. International attention intensified when Dr. Okafor published her preliminary findings in the Journal of African Earth Sciences. The academic paper, titled Exceptional Lithium Concentrations in the Nasarawa Pegmatite Complex, sent shockwaves through the global mining community. Within hours of publication, her email inbox was flooded with requests for more information. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. The world was experiencing an unprecedented demand for lithium, driven by the electric vehicle revolution and renewable energy storage systems. Tesla, BYD, and other major manufacturers were desperately seeking new sources of the critical mineral. Lithium prices had already tripled in the previous 2 years, and supply shortages were becoming a major concern for the entire industry. Major mining companies began mobilizing their African operations teams. Rio Tinto, BHP Billiton, and Barrick Gold all expressed interest in partnering with the Nigerian government to develop the resource. The Chinese, who controlled much of the world's lithium processing capacity, sent advance teams to Lagos to open discussions with Nigerian officials. But the discovery also raised important questions about Nigeria's readiness to handle such a massive development project. The country's mining sector had been relatively small compared to its oil and gas industry. Developing a world-class lithium operation would require significant infrastructure investment, technical expertise, and careful environmental planning. Environmental groups quickly voiced their concerns. The region where the lithium was discovered was home to several farming communities who depended on the land for their livelihoods. Local chiefs and community leaders began organizing meetings to discuss how this discovery would affect their people. They had seen how oil extraction had impacted communities in the Niger Delta, and wanted assurances that lithium mining would be different. Dr. Okafor understood these concerns better than most. Born and raised in Nigeria, she had always believed that the country's natural resources should benefit all Nigerians, not just wealthy foreign corporations. She began working with community leaders to ensure that local voices were heard in the planning process. The international media started paying attention when Bloomberg published a comprehensive analysis of the discovery's potential impact. Their headline read, "Nigeria's lithium find could reshape global EV supply chains." The article explained how this single deposit might contain enough lithium to supply the world's electric vehicle industry for decades. Financial markets reacted immediately. The Nigerian naira strengthened against major currencies as investors speculated about the country's economic future. Mining stocks with any connection to Africa saw significant price increases. The Lagos Stock Exchange experienced its best month in over 5 years. As the magnitude of the discovery became clear, Dr. Okafor realized that her routine mineral survey had uncovered something that would change Nigeria forever. The estimated value of the lithium deposit was approaching $12 trillion, making it potentially the most valuable mineral discovery in African history. This single find could transform Nigeria from an oil-dependent economy into a major player in the clean energy revolution. The geologist who had started this journey looking for modest mineral deposits now found herself at the center of a global phenomenon. Government officials, international executives, and community leaders all sought her expertise and guidance. The quiet academic had become the most important person in Nigeria's mining future, but this was just the beginning. The real challenges lay ahead as Nigeria prepared to navigate the complex process of turning this incredible discovery into sustainable prosperity for its people. The pristine valleys of Nasarawa State had remained largely untouched by industrial development for centuries. Ancient baobab trees dotted the landscape, their massive trunks serving as landmarks for travelers and gathering places for communities. Clear streams fed by seasonal rain supported diverse wildlife and provided water for farming communities. Now, as mining companies prepared detailed environmental impact studies, these peaceful landscapes became the center of heated debates about progress, preservation, and sustainability. Dr. Aduni Sani, Nigeria's leading environmental scientist, arrived at the mining site 6 weeks after the initial discovery. Commissioned by the Federal Environmental Protection Agency, she led a team of international experts tasked with conducting comprehensive environmental assessments. Their findings would heavily influence government decisions about how to proceed with lithium extraction. What they discovered in those rolling hills would challenge assumptions about mining's environmental impact and force difficult conversations about the true cost of the clean energy revolution. The biodiversity in the proposed mining area exceeded everyone's expectations. The team documented over 200 bird species, including several that were endemic to the region. Rare African wild dogs had been spotted in the area, along with various antelope species and smaller mammals that had found refuge from human encroachment in other parts of Nigeria. The region's isolation had inadvertently created one of Nigeria's most important but unstudied wildlife habitats. Water resources presented the most complex environmental challenge. The lithium deposits lay beneath aquifers that supplied water to over 100,000 people across 12 local government areas. The mining process would require substantial water usage, potentially affecting both quantity and quality of these crucial water sources. Hydrologist Dr. Emmanuel Oladipo spent 3 weeks mapping underground water flows and discovered that the aquifer system was more interconnected than previously understood. Traditional mining approaches for lithium typically involved open-pit operations that would permanently alter the landscape. However, the sheer scale of Nigeria's deposits meant that conventional mining would create environmental destruction on an unprecedented scale. Some early estimates suggested that full extraction might require disturbing over 500 square kilometers of land, an area larger than many small countries. Environmental activist and lawyer, Bisi Ogunjobi mobilized international environmental organizations to pressure for sustainable extraction methods. Her organization, Green Nigeria Initiative, partnered with Greenpeace and Friends of the Earth to document the potential environmental consequences of large-scale lithium mining. Their report, titled The Hidden Cost of Clean Energy, gained international attention and forced mining companies to reconsider their proposed extraction methods. The timing of environmental concerns proved particularly challenging because of the global push for electric vehicles and renewable energy storage. Environmental groups found themselves in the uncomfortable position of potentially opposing a mineral that was essential for combating climate change. This created philosophical divisions within the environmental movement about whether short-term environmental damage could be justified for long-term climate benefits. Some mining companies responded to environmental concerns by proposing innovative extraction technologies. Canadian firm Lithium Americas presented a plan for underground mining that would minimize surface disturbance. Their approach used advanced boring technology to access lithium deposits while leaving most of the surface landscape intact. However, this method was more expensive and would take longer to implement than traditional open-pit mining. Australian company Pilbara Minerals proposed a different solution, a phased extraction approach that would mine smaller sections of the deposit while simultaneously rehabilitating previously mined areas. Their plan included replanting native vegetation, creating artificial wetlands, and establishing wildlife corridors to maintain ecosystem connectivity. The company committed to achieving net positive biodiversity outcomes, meaning they would create more habitat than they destroyed. Local environmental challenges proved as important as global ones. Farming communities expressed concerns about dust, noise, and water contamination affecting their agricultural activities. Cattle herders worried that mining operations would disrupt seasonal migration patterns that had been followed for generations. Fishing communities along the Benue River feared that mining runoff might affect fish populations that provided both protein and income. Climate change added another dimension to environmental considerations. The region had been experiencing increasingly irregular rainfall patterns, and some communities worried that mining activities might worsen these problems. Meteorologist Dr. Funmilayo Adebayo studied local climate data and found that the area was already experiencing temperature increases and shifting precipitation patterns consistent with broader climate change trends. The discovery also highlighted Nigeria's limited environmental monitoring capacity. The country had relatively few environmental scientists with experience in large-scale mining operations. International environmental consultants were expensive and often lacked understanding of local ecological systems. This capacity gap meant that environmental oversight of mining operations might be inadequate, potentially leading to problems that wouldn't be detected until significant damage had occurred. Indigenous knowledge became crucial for understanding environmental implications. Elder community members like Malam Suleiman Adamu possessed detailed knowledge of local ecosystems developed over decades of observation. They could predict seasonal changes, identify important wildlife habitats, and recognize early signs of environmental stress. Mining companies began incorporating traditional ecological knowledge into their environmental planning processes. Air quality emerged as a significant concern as preliminary mining activities began. Dust from increased vehicle traffic and early excavation work started affecting respiratory health in nearby communities. Dr. Kemi Odukoya, a pulmonary specialist from the University of Lagos, documented increasing rates of respiratory complaints among residents living within 10 kilometers of mining activities. Her findings prompted calls for stricter air quality monitoring and dust control measures. The debate over environmental protection versus economic development became particularly intense in Nigeria's National Assembly. Senators from mining regions argued that environmental concerns shouldn't prevent Nigeria from benefiting from its natural resources. However, representatives from southern Nigeria, who had witnessed environmental degradation from oil extraction, pushed for stringent environmental protections and community benefit-sharing agreements. International environmental standards became a crucial reference point for these debates. The International Finance Corporation's performance standards for environmental and social sustainability provided frameworks that could be adapted to lithium mining in Nigeria. However, implementing these standards would require significant investment in monitoring systems and enforcement capacity that Nigeria currently lacked. Some environmental groups proposed alternative approaches entirely. Rather than large-scale mining, they suggested that Nigeria should focus on small-scale, artisanal lithium extraction that would have minimal environmental impact while providing more direct benefits to local communities. However, mining experts argued that this approach wouldn't be economically viable, given the global scale of lithium demand. The environmental impact assessment process became a major bottleneck in project development. International best practices required comprehensive studies that could take years to complete, but political and economic pressures pushed for faster development timelines. This tension between thoroughness and speed created ongoing conflicts between mining companies, government officials, and environmental advocates. Research institutions began establishing long-term environmental monitoring programs to track changes in the region over time. The University of Abuja partnered with international universities to create baseline environmental data that could be used to measure mining impacts. These programs would continue for decades, providing crucial information about the long-term environmental consequences of Nigeria's lithium extraction. As environmental debates intensified, it became clear that the decisions made about lithium mining in Nigeria would set important precedents for resource extraction across Africa. The continent possessed vast mineral wealth essential for the global clean energy transition, but extracting these resources sustainably remained a largely unsolved challenge. Nigeria's approach to balancing environmental protection with economic development would influence mining policies throughout sub-Saharan Africa.